Hey guys, welcome back again to Procurement with myself, Lerato. I am a procurement professional, business coach, mentor, strategist, and literally anything and everything can talk about procurement, call me. Anyway, I'm excited to start about this new series, Contract Management. I mean, we all know that being in procurement, you do source services on behalf of business and you engage a lot with suppliers, and then you must make sure that you put a contract in place. You cannot, after you've sourced products and services, and then you don't enter into a contract. And the purpose of having a contract is to make sure that you solidify the relationship between the buyer and the seller and have something in writing, because we know that we do get involved in some of the litigation situations that we don't want to find ourselves. And I think this is one of the exciting series that you are going to enjoy. If you are a buyer that deals with goods and services, if you are a supplier that does provide a service to a particular organization and a client, you must be interested in what we're going to be talking about today, because guys, you know, I just hook you all up. So let's start. Contract management. There are different types of contracts, various kinds, depending on what type of organization and institution you work for and what type of services that you guys procure. I mean, there's group frame agreements, there is global master service agreements for most of the multinational companies, which then describes the overarching terms and conditions, whereby it can be trickled down to the in-country contracts, where they have operational countries, operational units under the umbrella of the group. Usually we find these multinationals, you know, big companies like your Nestle's, big companies like Microsoft, you know, quite a lot of them. And then you also have in-country contracts that are country specific, right? This is where then you come and define the specifics of the country requirements. And then there's also master service agreement, there's services agreements, there is maintenance agreement, there's licensing, there is lease agreements, there's all kinds and types of contracts, you know, supply and maintenance or supply and delivery of goods and services. But what we find ourselves in as procurement professionals is to making sure that we draft, we review, and we negotiate contracts, right? And sometimes things can go wrong when you are drafting the contracts, when you're doing the review, and more so entering into that incorrect type of contract. I see this quite often. I think sometimes we have played out, you know, having a contract means one thing, and there are different types of purchasing agreements, right? And I'm just going to take you through the top three, which are very common. You know, you can Google them, you'll find this information. But I just want to, you know, talk a little bit about these top three purchasing type of contracts, irrespective of you're entering into a services agreement, supply and delivery, but you'll find the nature of the purchasing itself part of these three, which is fixed price contract, right? So let's talk about the fixed price contract, guys. When the scope is clear, we know what we want, especially this is common when we have finished the tender process and we award that contract award, that value that is there. We then translate that into a contract, and that's a fixed price. You're not going to pay more. The supplier's not going to come back and say, oopsie, I forgot to charge this, I forgot to charge that. And, you know, that's what normally happens. I think most of organizations do enter into fixed type contract. In some cases, they call it lump sum type of contracts, right? And the intention is all good, because, I mean, I just awarded you a 2 million rand project. I expect you to deliver 2 million, you know, as per agreement. And I don't expect you to be spending more than the 2 million that you were awarded for, right? That's clear. Two, we have a cost reimbursement contract. Now, this one is quite flexible. In most cases, is used in the project space, whereby you can pay supplier per milestone. You know, as we complete this section, we pay this much. As the cost we incurred in this space, this is how much we then pay. And it's almost not fixed, but it depends on the deliverables. It depends on the milestone payments that is done, and then that's completed, right? That's also another form of purchasing agreement that you can enter into. And then we have the third one, time and material. This is clear, it's self-explanatory. I mean, time and material, it's very common in your IT consultants type of contracts, where you have resources, you have consultants, they come in for certain hours, and you agree on the rate per hour, the rate card, and end of the month you do your timesheets, you realize, okay, you work so many hours, and this is what I'm going to be charging you for. Now, my focus, it's not on explaining these three, But let's chat more around the downside of a fixed price contract model. In as far as you can negotiate this contract as much as you have done so, but there is a couple of downside and downfalls that we experience as procurement professionals, that suppliers experience, and it becomes frustrating and causes a lot of litigation, unnecessary litigation, because I think the principles are just not agreed properly from the beginning. Now, firstly, because the principle of fixed price is the price must remain the same, you're not going to increase any pricing. What happens most of the time on the ground, a business tends to give suppliers more instruction than it was in the brief. The brief changes as time goes on. Marketers are culprits in this one. And you realize that, man, I'm spending more as a vendor, and you start getting variation orders, right? Even if the intention was to remain at a 2 million rand type of project deal that you agreed on, but then as business you find yourself having to spend more because now you are giving instruction outside of the initial scope. The vendor is doing more than they were contracted to do, and now issues start happening. And that's just the downside of not defining correctly your fixed price contract terms, or even entering into the fixed price type of contract, whereas the nature of the service does not need that type of a lump sum contract model, right? And secondly, you then find suppliers that start reducing the quality of work. They start then compromising some of the qualities when they are then delivering, because they're trying to cut corners. I mean, who wants to work and not make profit? Of course, right? So now the level of execution starts to drop, starts to go down, it starts to drop. And this is when we see the disadvantage of using a fixed price where it's not applicable. There's nothing wrong with using a fixed price contract term. When it's applicable, when you've done your research right, when the services and the products required matches that, then it doesn't become a downfall. But if you do not define it properly and you just use the wrong application, that's when you start facing challenges. Okay. 2, it offers no flexibility of the buyer, right? That's just the downside, no flexibility. Sometimes market changes, guys. We are aware of the market changes. We are aware we live in a VUCA world. We live in this uncertain world. There's volatility. There's just a lot of things happening that the business plans this, tomorrow this thing is what's happening. The marketers plan that, and tomorrow the innovation team is coming something different. Competition happens, quickly, especially in the FMCG and the tech space. Competition is rife, it's fast, and sometimes you need to adapt to the changes there and there. And if you are locked into this fixed price type of contract model, it doesn't give you that flexibility. And what happens now? You start having to go the change management route, and it just becomes complex and more complex and more complex. 3, it's obviously you did not select the right contract framework from the beginning, right? I mean, for those group frame agreements and or your global master services agreements, sometimes there are things agreed at the group level, whereby maybe a company offers a service to 5 countries, and there's a global agreement between the 2 entities, probably, just to use an example, Accenture maybe and Nestle, for example, right? They have had some agreement at a group level, and now when it starts to trickle down to the opcos themselves, the operating companies, then things happen, change happen. You didn't enter into a proper framework agreement that is limiting now the execution to be that fixed price model. I know when it benefits, the client, they want to then tap into the prices that was agreed with the group, right? But if you check in the country, sometimes you find that you have issues like withholding tax, and another country doesn't have that. In South Africa, you have issues like BE compliance. It might cost companies to develop them or to get themselves involved. There's just too many variables that are not considered when you're entering into a fixed price contract that needs to be considered. And this responsibility is with procurement professionals, not with legal. Because this is a purchase agreement. Legal is there to assist, legal is there to support and to ensure that we enter into a valid contract that can stand in the court of law, and make sure that we are covered as a company, right? But the terms of the agreement, the terms of the service lies predominantly within the procurement culture. That's it, yeah. Now, another element is ignoring third-party risk assessment. When there's an application of fixed price contract model, some days we do ignore doing a third-party risk assessment, and incorporating risk assessment methodology into the contract model helps procurement and business to identify these risks earlier on, because then the risk assessment will then, and auditing, sometimes done by the auditing team or the compliance team, it depends how it's structured in organizations. But when you then do not incorporate that, you cannot detect these things earlier, and you start seeing issues along the lines once you've contracted, of course. And this is where then the issue starts, And the last one for now, of course not least, is procurement will start seeing an increase of maverick spend. A spend without a contract, right? I know that's the nature of understanding what maverick spend is, but now value leakage or spend leakage, this is when the issue starts, right? Because that very same spend that has leaked outside of the contract, it's not contracted spend. We've contracted 2 million when we started, but now we're at 2.5. How do we account for this 500,000? It's outside of the contract. It's still maverick spend. I know we can use the terminology maverick spend when there is no contract at all, and business does do engagements, with suppliers or services, and now procurement just sees after the fact. But these are the contributing factors of the downside of using a fixed price contract, which you should be defining and using it correctly, applying it in the right type of scenario and the dynamics that suits that type of product and services, and the service requirements from the end users. But what I do find quite often is this is the downside of using a fixed price. So it is upon procurement professionals to apply the right application, to ensure that we do the right application for the services and the products that we procure on behalf of business, be it IT software, be it maintenance services, be it consultants, be it goods and services, whatever. If we are going to be saying this is a set price and we are then applying this, we better make sure that we are ready for that. Okay, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in today. We have a lot more to chat about regarding this topic. It is the series for the month, I did say, so this is part 1, and we're going to be enjoying a lot more as we go along. Thank you, and have a beautiful week as always. Mwah.